Okay, guys, welcome to another one of my sessions. I have with me Dhaval Monani and Dr. Miniya Chatterji. They are a affordable housing as well as a sustainability expert, respectively, and they're both associated with the Anant National University. Hi, how are you, Dhaval?
Hi, Hrishikesh. I'm good. Glad to be here.
And thanks for joining us, Dr. Miniya.
Thanks, Hrishi, for inviting me. All good.
So, these are unprecedented times, and obviously, unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. We're hearing all these wonderful stories. I mean, apart from all the gloomy stories about how, for example, here in Mumbai city, the NSCI Dome Stadium in Worli has been taken over and converted into a 500-bed quarantine facility. And in that aspect, the two of you, along with your teams, have been working very actively to try and improve our facilities. So, Dhaval, I'd like you to start on really your contribution and what you've achieved thus far, what you're hoping to achieve on the ground.
So, Rishi, what we realized that the biggest challenge facing us in setting up quarantine facilities is the cost and the availability of equipment.
Yep.
And our research and a little bit of deep dive showed that with some creative thinking, we can come up with alternates that can not only be scaled up very fast, but also be more economical because at the end of the day, we have some resources and we want to stretch them to target as many people as possible. So one thing we did was we came up with this whole concept of using corrugated cardboard for furniture. Now, corrugated cardboard has been used before, but it has an inherent challenge that being paper, it cannot be disinfected, and it can lose its strength if you do pocha or water falls on it. So we came up with a solution, and we went to the packaging industry for that, and we laminated it on one side. So what that does is that it can be disinfected, laminated, reused, and it is completely safe, recyclable, and it gives us a lot of strength. So we expect that beds and stuff like this can last more than a couple of years maybe. So that, and they cost a fraction of what it costs to get a normal bed. Second thing, that they are very light, can be packed in a very small space and transported across the country. Now we realize that the two biggest things that we need is like beds, and we call them side tables or medicine boxes and medical parley, where you have to keep your medicines and instruments and all. So we came up with designs of those two, and we are furnishing these COVID recovery facilities with them. They have already been set up in Bombay, in Najambag, and very well received. And we are in the process of coming up with 2, 3 more, products that can be used, divisors, medicine cabinets. Now, all of these things are, very easy to scale up. So we can actually, in a week's time, have X thousand beds running at any place.
Dr. Miniya, I mean, as in the working in the field that you do, you know as well as anybody else that there is so much said about banning plastic in this country because, and fundamentally because there are so many people who are living below the poverty line. It's very, very difficult for people to just give up plastic consumption, especially the poorest of the poor. And you would also, in that aspect, advocate a replacement or give them, more available options if we have to get rid of the plastic, as opposed to just banning the use of plastic without giving any other option. So let's talk about that. And with regard to PPE, the protective equipment that we are seeing, a lot of people are turning around and saying a lot of that is plastic. You could argue that in medical health emergencies like this, you shouldn't think of those things. But, it is a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Rishi, firstly, I would like to make a little disclaimer that how I look at sustainability, and I teach this also in various universities, I'm a practitioner of that, is it's not only about the environment, or nor is it only about CSR.
Sure.
The way I've been looking at it and practicing it is that it basically comes down to involvement of all stakeholders in order to do things for the benefit of all stakeholders beyond just shareholder value. So that group of stakeholders includes the flora and the fauna, but it also includes people like you mentioned, rag pickers or consumers of plastic. So that then, looks at that for me is sustainability. And I've been an adjunct professor at Sciences Po Paris for the last 4 years. I teach that in all the organizations that my company Sustain Labs takes up. That's what we advocate and that's what we practice. So in a country like India and other emerging economies, where along with environment and the consequences of climate change and environmental degradation, we also have other crises to deal with, which is poverty and shelter, which food security, poverty, shelter. So these issues need to be also handled in the same solutions. So you're absolutely right. We can't just outright ban plastics. There is a way to do that. And in my experience, it's often very local. Different communities, different locations have varying occupations and structures in which they operate. And any kind of policy related to environment needs to take into account these other issues that specific location has, and those policies need to be rethought, reformed, and rolled out accordingly. So even for PPPs also it's the same thing. We are in a disaster situation. It's a health disaster. We need to make sure that in the urgent, that right now people are saved, people's lives are saved in a manner that in the mid to long term as well, things roll out smoothly. So given that context, what we're looking at is that making these structures, these spaces for COVID recovery. The way we're doing it is in spaces which can be kept for the mid to long term, Hrishi. So instead of taking up schools, for example, which the Kerala model was doing earlier, for example, we're not taking up schools as a top priority because schools at some point, workplaces at some point need to open up. A more sustainable solution is taking up spaces which we feel that in the mid-term, the long term will not be needed because COVID is not going anywhere unless a vaccine is found. So taking up marriage halls, community halls, large halls and spaces, which are lying vacant and which we can, take up using the community to build it, using local ways like what Dhaval said, cardboard manufacturers to actually build it.
Dhaval, would you give us some more examples of spaces that you're working with currently? You mentioned a few in Maharashtra, in Gujarat. Would you?
We are working in Kerala and Maharashtra.
Okay.
And as Miniya said, this started off on some work we were doing on vacant housing, and we realized that India has a lot of vacant hard infrastructure.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, marriage halls, community halls, vacant buildings that have been built and not occupied. Now these things are there, the expenditure is already done, and a lot of them are owned either by the government or by community organizations, without any financial interest. So we actually came up with a model that we can utilize them, and these places usually have your electricity, your sanitation and all done. So furnishing them is very easy and fast. Second, from a medical point of view, you have to see that these spaces need to be large. They cannot be small rooms because the nurses and doctors have to keep an eye on a large number of patients. So looking that, we came up with this model. We are doing a COVID mid to mild recovery in Kerala. We are doing COVID recovery mild and quarantine in Bombay. Hopefully we'll be expanding in other locations as well. But the model seems to be making sense because I would say we are furnishing them and getting them operational at the cheapest per bed cost in the country right now.
Yeah, because for the serious cases, in any case, we've just had the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation turning around and saying that they are going to take over emergency facilities in private hospitals, which, was a long time coming. And it's about time that, this kind of a public-private partnership started happening. But for the mild cases and, the quarantining, I think what you've talked about is really the solution. So, Dr. Miniya, how does it really work? I just want to understand how you guys go about the planning of it. He basically plans the way that, the beds or the arrangements are going to be made. Where do you come in there?
Well, we're working as a team and then also with other stakeholders as well.
Sure.
So at the Center for Sustainability at Anant University, we're all part of the same team. And how it works is that, I go looking for the right space using, different other platforms that I'm part of. So for example, Kerala came in through an organization called Parliamentarians for Innovators in India. It's a group of multi-party MPs along with funders, and I'm a mentor on that. So that's something I had access to, and so that space came in from there. The first step is that we identify the space and get in touch with the local government. And then we identify that, okay, what needs to be done? What is needed? Is it a temporary hospital for moderate cases, or is it a quarantine center? What's needed there? And then we rack our brains on how do we furnish it? So for example, in Kerala that Dhaval mentioned, we decided to do, for moderate cases because they were expecting NRIs to come in and from infected countries. So we've set up semi-fowler beds and oxygen supply and, your syringes and pumps, everything. And that's done together. Then we have a partner called Habitat for Humanity because they have people on the grounds, and we had signed an MOU already a few months ago. So they come in to set it up, which is extremely important, because they have the manpower on the ground. Right from taking pictures of the various spaces that the local government's giving us to actually hiring the labor and setting it up, that's what they do. And we send them all the equipment, we truck, by trucks all the way from Gujarat to the location. We did the same thing for Bombay as well. It was Milind Diora who got us the space. He got us in touch with BMC. Milind is a friend of mine, and we got in touch with BMC. And with BMC, Milind, and also some local MLAs, we identified spaces. Habitat went in and took pictures. We figured what needs to be done, how many beds, what equipment, what's needed, and we filled that up. One of the innovations which came up with laminated cardboard furniture that came to our mind spontaneously because we're like, oh my goodness, Bombay needs so many spaces. We can't be using steel beds. So that's how it's operating, and it's just on the scale up is just going very fast.
And I know it's not your field, as it were, per se, Dhaval, but there is an urgent need for innovation today more than any moment in the past. I mean, even if you look at low-cost ventilators, hospitals are running out of ventilators. We need innovators to come up there, and both of you have been part of think tanks, have been part of councils where creators have come in and created stuff. You think that now we're rising up to the challenge? Innovators are coming through. I don't know, I was reading somewhere that we had the first electric car 8 years before Tesla had it, and and that's a prime example. I mean, we should be in the forefront of innovation, saying, let's build these low-cost ventilators, for example, and get it up and running on the ground. Are you seeing that change, Dhaval, on the ground?
Yes, actually, I think over this last 2 months, people have been looking at more and more ways to, help out, I would say, rather than take advantage. Because there are companies that are actually putting their resources and even startups. So there's another startup I know which is trying to build low-cost homes for migrants when they come back. Because even though the government is doing a lot of stuff, the scale of the problem is so large in India that without thinking out of the box, thinking of alternate solutions that work in our context, we'll never be able to solve this. You rightly mentioned low-cost ventilators. We're also working on low-cost, testing labs. So everybody's figuring out that, there are solutions possible, which we look at it from our Indian perspective, which work fine. And even when we went out and manufactured these beds, we found local manufacturers who could just ramp up, scale up, adopt their supply lines very, very fast. We were working in full COVID shutdown with special passes to go to the factories every day. Wow. So yeah, I think that a lot is being done, and a little bit of encouragement and giving them the sort of an recognition or airtime would really help bring these stories out.
Okay, either of you could take this. If anybody is listening to this or watching this and they want to get in touch for their community, where can they reach you people uh, to provide solutions? If you could just give out a website or an email ID or something, that'll be great, Dr. Miniya or Dhaval.
Yeah, if I think we need spaces. So if anybody is
Yep.
willing to give up a free space, they should contact us. And we're also now trying to figure out low-cost testing vehicles. So if there is a lab, who wants to join hands with us and run these testing vehicles, we are at the moment brainstorming and figuring out how to do this. So, we are open to that as well. So spaces and any labs who's interested. To reach us, they can reach out to, either the university's address, that's sustainability@anant@anu.edu.in. So sustainability, aerobase, @anu.edu.in. Or they can reach me directly, miniya.chatterji@anu.edu.in. Or you can also put up my number as well, my cell number, 88264-10586. Spaces and labs, please feel free.
If you could just go slow on the number, please. The number one more time.
Yeah, 88264-10586.
Okay. So this is, a prime example of people who are associated with an educational university coming forth to provide solutions. And I think that's absolutely stellar. That's part of the reason why, as a journalist, this story called out to me. Is this your first turn, Dhaval, at doing something of this nature? Or have you people in the past also, risen to the occasion when calamities or natural calamities have struck? Because in your line of work, which is low-cost housing, the options to do stuff in calamities is amazing.
I'll take part of it first. What I have been part of a universities before, but my work has always been market focused. So I used to be associated with the Indian School of Business, where I set up one of my companies, ISB in Hyderabad. It's one of the leading B schools in India. And we had a center which looked at market-based solutions. And I strongly believe that at times what we need to innovate in any space which has really a lot of demand, it's scalable only if you have a market-based solution. You can't rely on subsidies and handouts. So that's where one of my first companies was founded as well, where we did housing at 3 lakhs and a little below 5 lakhs, commercial housing. And the projects were very successful. What a lot of universities give you is the potential to go outside of the normal mold of thinking. So at Anant, we are looking at it from more than one perspective. Apart from the low cost perspective or sustainability perspective, we're also looking at innovations that can be scalable. So that, for me and for us, it's always the key. If I can't scale it up, it will never reach the people or solve the problem that we intend to.
And Dr. Chatterji, I was going through the program schedule. You have something very interesting starting in August. Is that another innovation camp or something like that? A course?
Yeah, that's the Fellowship for Climate Change. We're really excited about that. There's a lot of anxiety in the world about climate change. And so we've brought together really the pioneers in solutions for climate change. It goes back to, Hrishi, what you said, that climate change in the context of India and the emerging world, where issues like food security and shelter are equally important as the consequences for climate change. So people like Chetan, you mentioned the electric car. He discovered, so Chetan and Mustafa Mokas and Arunaba Ghosh, and then there's Laurence Lubiana and Adam Verback internationally as well. So these are all people I've worked with in the past, and they've come together as mentors to the fellowship. And we went out while, looking for candidates. And honestly, in the month of January, I was almost having sleepless nights at who's going to, apply for this. But we just closed applications on the 15th, and we had a stellar number, like 1035 applications, and over about 600 queries. And for just 20 spots, which we had to increase to 25, and we had applications from 28 countries. And the age range from 14 to 64. The shortlisted candidates are 14 to 64. The 14-year-old who's shortlisted is amazing. Like, he's made a climate change documentary, given TED Talks. 17-year-old from Australia. He speaks more sense than most 40-year-olds I've met. So, and we have ex-CEOs and people running companies, and it's an amazing shortlisted group. So I'm really excited about it. And it'll be a one-year program. The whole objective, Hrishi, is that you have these pioneers who are the mentors, to the program. But we need more hands on board, because these solutions that the mentors have created, from electric cars to renewable to climate policy, innovative climate financing, all that needs to be scaled up. And just as Dhaval said, for me, scale is very important. I've written about equality or the lack of it in India. Everything that I've done, it's always about making sure that not the 1% in emerging countries, but then the most vulnerable part of the community needs to benefit from growth. So, these solutions which the pioneers have come up with need to be scaled up. And these fellows that every year, it's an annual program, these are the people who will be joining hands with these mentors after the fellowship ends and during the fellowship as well, through mentorship, to power up these solutions so that they can truly be scaled up to benefit everybody.
Let's just keep an eye on the future. I mean, often people are worried that in affordable housing, like we just mentioned very briefly, the COVID situation is not going away anytime soon. We have to learn to live with the virus, at least till the vaccine is out or till herd immunity doesn't happen. People are always a little worried about how will affordable housing allow us to live in isolation. And you've built some very, very interesting models, and some of them have been implemented here in Mumbai city. And you definitely think that is possible. Dhaval, let's talk us through that, please.
Yes, see, I think at times we need to, every challenge that comes, we need to rethink the solutions. So till now, if I were to say that, Dharavi can be built not dense, that's not going to happen. But then if we have to rebuild it, we have to rethink some of the paradigms that we've already worked with. Places like Mumbai are some of the most difficult, some of the most challenging, but also from any perspective, the most interesting, because they give you scale. And with scale, usually costs come down, solutions can be implemented. So we've looked at various models, and we've tried to break away from a certain, there's a certainty. People say, oh, you go vertical, you use FSI, that works. But we found it doesn't, a lot of times. And Bombay, for all its challenges, we've managed to find that there are solutions that we are coming up with in 2 or 3 suburbs that might go against the conventional norm. And these are completely private-based solutions. They are not subsidized in any way. So we will have to look for them, because the vertical developments that have happened till now, they will have to be modified. The way they are, we'll have to give more space, we'll have to give more ventilation, we'll have to design it in a way that people don't come in very dense contact. But I think that's a sort of a thing that will have to evolve over 2 or 3 months. It cannot happen.
Sure. And I read an article which you had written where you had said sustainability is not just about corporate social responsibility, and that really rung very true with me, Dr. Chatterji. I want to end by asking you, I mean, the first thing that people will turn around and do is, and I've seen large corporates already saying this, saying, oh, revenue is hit. Who can think about sustainability in the environment right now? And that's exactly your point, which earlier on in this conversation, you turned around and said that it can be low cost and it can be scalable. And despite the COVID situation, this is a wonderful opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah. See, I think absolutely. So, and this is a great example of everything that I have been saying and writing earlier on, that, when companies go into losses, the first place where the tap runs dry is CSR and R&D. See, I come from a, very hardcore private sector background. I started as an investment banker at Goldman and then the World Economic Forum. And it gave me a lot of, and then Jindal Steel and Power, manufacturing infrastructure and stuff. So it gave me a really good insight into how corporations work. And the only way to get businesses to do good, which essentially is what I do, is to have an incentivized structure where you create incentives for businesses to gain as well. That, when there is a situation like this, when the world is readying up for a recession, businesses are inherently creating value by employing people, and if given a chance, they would want to also contribute to social equity and be environmentally responsible. But they have to see the incentive as well. Sure. And CSR, I mean, honestly, it's there are mid-level companies which don't even qualify for CSR at this point, because it's 500 crores and above as revenue who are mandated to do CSR. And if your company is in losses for any of one of the last 3 years, then you're off the hook. You don't need to do CSR. So the mid-level companies, what incentive do they have? And if it's large companies, they're anyways going to go in losses most likely. So they won't be able to. So you need to incentivize social good and environmental responsibility within large and small businesses. Social enterprises don't have to be startups.
Very well said. Dhaval, Dr. Miniya Chatterji, thank you very much for talking to me, and keep up the great work, the two of you. Cheers.
Thank you, Hrishi. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.